Hello. Born-Hilborn vs. Everett Many Worlds. Why history selection beats infinite cat cloning. Everett Many Worlds interpretation is often sold as the clean, brave, mathematically honest interpretation of quantum mechanics. No collapse, no special observer, no mysterious measurement event. Just the universe wave function evolving forever, smoothly, deterministically. Sean Carroll has defended this view aggressively. In one Carroll Singh paper, the proposal is described as the simplest quantum ontology with almost everything else. Space fields and ordinary reality treated as emergent from Hilbert's space structure. That sounds elegant until you ask the obvious human question. Where did our one world go? Everett does not give us one world, one you, one me. It gives us every branch. In Schrodinger's cat, the cat lives, the cat dies, the observer sees the cat live, the observer sees the cat die. The universe does not choose reality, does not collapse. Reality does not collapse, nothing is selected, everything compatible with the wave function simply continues partitioned into decoherent branches we don't see. In the standard many worlds account, both alive and dead cat states persist after the box is opened, just in different universes, with observer states correlated to each branch. That is the first major problem. If there is no collapse, there is no real history selection. And if there is no history selection, then there is no pressure on the past. In the Born-Hilborn interpretation, collapse matters because collapse selects not only an outcome, but a whole history. If the cat is found alive, the selected world includes a past where the cat remained alive. If the cat is found dead, the selected world includes a past where the decay occurred, the poison released, and the cat died. Measurement is not merely a final label stuck on the box. Measurement is history selection. Many Worlds avoids this entirely. It says, do not select, let both happen. That is not an explanation of our one experience world. That is a refusal to choose, a refusal to understand the Hilborn mathematics. Everett's many world interpretation says the universal wave function evolves without collapse. Measurement is treated as ordinary unitary evolution, and different outcomes become separate decoherent branches. In many worlds, all possible quantum outcomes are physically realized in different worlds or branches, depending on how the interpretation is framed. Many worlds also says the universe is so afraid of making decisions that it keeps every receipt, every possibility, every version, every cat, every observer, every dead cat, every living cat. It solves the measurement problem the way a hoarder solved cleaning, by insisting nothing should ever be thrown away. Born-Hilborn says the opposite. Born-Hilborn says universe selects one coherent timeline and one world we know and love by multiplying ordinary quantum possibility by spacetime expectations. Even future observers count in this model. Reality equals the Born rule multiplied by expectations across all of spacetime, even the future. Or shorter, reality equals QM times spacetime expectations. That is the central advantage. Everett gives us branch multiplication. Born-Hilborn gives us history selection. One world that we know and love. Sean Carroll's many world work leans heavily on the idea that the Born rule can be recovered through self-locating uncertainty after branching, but before an observer registers an outcome. The observer supposedly knows the universal wave function, but does not know which branch they are on. Carroll and Sebens argued this can lead to the Born rule. But listen to what that means. Many worlds does not truly select the outcome. It gives every outcome, then asks each observer copy to be uncertain about which copy they are. That is not history selection. That is metaphysical crowd control. How many versions of you do you think exist? Born-Hilborn is cleaner. It does not say all worlds are equally actual, and then try to rescue probability afterward. It says possible histories are weighted. The Born rule supplies the quantum availability. The Hilborn rule supplies the expectation weight across the spacetime block that selects this world. The selected world is the strongest coherent history. Many worlds says all branches exist, and you wake up in one. Born-Hilborn says one coherent history is selected, and your waking world is the result. Now let us use Schrodinger's cat, because this is where the absurdity becomes more obvious. In Copenhagen, the cat is treated as alive or dead only after measurement, and that implies the history of the selection in Copenhagen interpretation is random. The cat in the Copenhagen interpretation has a randomly has a randomly selected history. If the cat is alive, a living cat history is selected. If dead, a dead cat history is selected. Copenhagen at least has one virtue. It admits one outcome appears. It has collapse, even if it explains collapse poorly. Even closing our eyes puts our family, our homes, and occupations, and our health in superposition. Just closing our eyes. If we can place a cat in Schrodinger's box, why not the Earth, Moon, and the universe every time that we close our eyes? You literally select history randomly every time you open your eyes, according to Copenhagen interpretation. If Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg were correct in Copenhagen. Everett removes collapse so the cat does not resolve into alive or dead. Both branches continue. One branch contains the dead cat and the branch contains the living cat. This is why many worlds can be described rhetorically as producing an immortal Schrodinger's cat. Not because every cat avoids death in every branch, but because whenever there is any non-zero amplitude for survival, there remains some branch where the cat lives. One cat or version of you can never die. We have an immortal cat. If it tried to die, another world would pop up with the alternative branch of aliveness. That is the trick. The cat dies in one branch, but another version survives. Then that surviving version faces future dangers. And again, there may be another branch where it survives. In the loose many worlds imagination, there is always some lucky branch where the cat keeps going. This is related to the quantum immortality idea. From a first-person survival perspective, one imagines continuing only along branches where one survives. So many worlds does not give us one cat. It gives us cat accounting, a zillion copycats, a zillion histories, none selected by us. Dead cat over here, living cat over there, observer crying in this branch, observer relieved in that branch, no collapse, no final decision, no selected history, just a cosmic filing cabinet with every outcome. Born-Hilborn says enough. The question is not whether mathematics can describe a superposition of branches. Of course it can. The question is whether reality is actually a warehouse of unselected alternatives or whether reality is the selected history we experience. The Born-Hilborn answer is reality is selected. History selection is the key. Many worlds has no real teleology because nothing is selected. If every branch exists, then no future expectation applies pressure to pass. No branch needs to be pulled into coherence. No timeline needs to satisfy future observers. Everything simply happens or somewhere, which is another way of saying nothing is explained here in particular. Born-Hilborn gives teleology a mechanism. Future expectation has weight because the future is part of the space-time block. If future observers expect to breathe, reproduce, remember, love, think, build, and exist, those expectations contribute to the weighting of histories that make those future observers possible. That is not magic. That is history selection under space-time expectation. Many worlds says the future does not select the past. Every past compatible with some branch just exists. Born-Hilborn says the future helps weight the past into one coherent world. That is why Born-Hilborn explains intelligent design. Yes, this channel teaches intelligent design. It teaches that we collapse history where we lived as crabs. If we selected history that created our thumbs, the more satisfying answer than many worlds is that we personally had to live our lives as crabs to practice our thumbs. Many worlds can only say, in some branches life evolves, in some branches it does not, in some branches thumbs arise, in some branches they do not. In some branches consciousness beings ask why they exist, in many others nobody asks anything because nobody is there. That is not design, that is a multiverse shrug. Born-Hilborn says future function weights earlier biological history. The universe can only function one way. History selection model. If future humans expect thumbs, grips, tools, writing, repair, art, and manipulation, then histories containing earlier grip functions, weight gain, crabs and claws, and thumbs become primitive, rehearsals of grasping. They are not human thumbs, obviously, but in functional possibility space, claws are grip machines. They are earlier biological punctuation marks in the grammar of thumbs. They were being written. Many worlds says there are branches there where claws arise and branches where they do not. Born-Hilborn says a future thumb can weight the history of grip, which Which one sounds like an explanation? The same applies to breathing. Many worlds says there are worlds with plants, worlds without plants, worlds with oxygen, worlds without oxygen, worlds with lungs, worlds without lungs. It multiplies alternatives without selecting meaning. No quality at all. Born-Hilborn says future breath waits earlier gas exchange histories. Plants become part of the selected ancestry of breathing. Forests are not decorative. They are respiratory preparation in a history selecting toward breath and eyesight. Many worlds gives you every possible jungle and every possible desert. Born-Hilborn gives the selected history and produces lungs. The same applies to sex drive. In many worlds, some branches contain your ancestors reproducing and some do not. In the branches where they do not, you are not there to complain. That is an anthropic shrug again. Of course we find ourselves in this branch where we exist. Wonderful, very deep. A cosmic version of because otherwise you would not be asking. Born-Hilborn goes further. It says, future observers exert expectation weight on the histories that produce them. Your existence is not merely an accidental branch where chemistry happened to continue. Your future observer state waits the reproductive history that makes your existence possible. Sex drive is not only a local biological appetite, it is future-weighted history insisting on incarnation. This is where Sean Carroll's many worlds view becomes especially unsatisfying. Carroll wants an austere quantum ontology, wave function, Hamiltonian branch structure, emergent everything else. Space emerges, field emerge, observers emerge, meaning emerge. The one world we actually live in becomes a perspective accident inside a larger branching structure. Born-Hilborn says, no, the one world is not an illusion produced by branch ignorance. The one world is the selected history that we know and love. The world says our experience of one world is subjective branch location. Born-Hilborn says our experience of one world is objective history selection. That difference matters a lot. Born-Hilborn says consciousness is not an accidental passenger inside one branch. Consciousness is part of this weighted observer collapse process. Thought was pressure. Expectation has weight. Memory is not merely a brain file. If there's people in the future that are expecting us to have children, that makes us have children. Memory is not merely a brain file. It is relation to selected history. Reality is not just observed. Reality is stabilized through expectation-weighted history selection. Many worlds cannot do this because it refuses selection. No selection, no pressure, no teleology, no real explanation for why this one coherent world appears, rather than an infinite stack of unchosen alternatives. This is why the immortal cat is such a useful ridicule point. The many worlds keeps the living cat because it keeps everything. That is not mercy, that is metaphysical clutter. It also keeps the dead cat, the grieving observer, the relieved observer, and every later branch where those branches branch again. The cat becomes immortal, not only because many worlds cannot stop copying cats. Born-Hilborn does not need immortal copycats. Born-Hilborn needs one selected cat history. The cat is alive because the living cat history was selected, or the cat is dead because the dead cat history was selected. Either way, the point is not the cat's final condition. The point is the whole history that becomes real. History selection, history selection, history selection, history selection. That is what physicists keep missing when they stare only at the aliveness or deadness of the cat. The cat's pulse is not what's at stake. The cat state is not enough. The cat requires a history. The observer requires a history. The room requires a history. The memory of opening the box requires a history. The universe needs a history every time you open your eyes. The entire world that contains the result requires a history. Many worlds refuses to select that history. Copenhagen makes collapse random. Born-Hilborn selects it. Carroll's model can sound sophisticated because it has the courage of mathematical extremism. It says take the wave function seriously, let it branch, and accept the consequences. But accept the consequences here means accepting a very extravagant ontology of non-communicating branches where every allowed outcome is realized. Many worlds is often defended as minimal because it removes collapse, but it pays for that simplicity by multiplying worlds. The simplicity is in the equation, not in the ontology. Born-Hilborn is way more satisfying because it keeps quantum possibility but restores one world selection. It does not multiply reality into an unobservable cosmic landfill of branch cats, or us. It says the one world we experience is selected by lawful principle. Reality equals the Born rule multiplied by expectations across spacetime. This is why Born-Hilborn resolves what many worlds only evades. Many worlds evade collapse by keeping all outcomes. Born-Hilborn explains collapse as history selection. Many worlds evades probability by inventing self-locating uncertainty. Born-Hilborn explains waiting through expectation across space-time. Many worlds evades teleology through anthropic branch selection. Hilborn explains teleology as a future expectation waiting past compatible histories. Many worlds evades consciousness by burying it in branch local observer copies. Born-Hilborn places consciousness inside the selection rule itself. Many worlds gives us infinite histories. Born-Hilborn gives us one selected history, one world we know and love. And we should not be shy about saying which is more coherent. Many worlds is not bold because it explains too much. It is reckless because it selects nothing. The Born-Hilborn interpretation is bold because it identifies the missing mechanism, history selection. The universe does not need to create endless cats to avoid choosing. The universe needs a rule for why one coherent history becomes the experienced reality. That rule is the Born-Hilborn rule. Reality equals QM times expectations across spacetime, including the future. The Born rule supplies quantum possibility. The Hilborn rule supplies expectation weight. Together they select the timeline. That is why Born-Hilborn is more sensible than Everett. Everett gives us no collapse and therefore no pressure on the past. Born-Hilborn gives us collapse as selected history, and that selected history explains why reality has direction, coherence, memory, consciousness, sex drive, intelligent design, and teleology. Sean Carroll can keep his endlessly branching Hilbert Space Cathedral. Born-Hilborn gives us the one world we actually wake up inside. And that is the world science needs to explain. Our world, the world we know and love. The end. If you understand the Born-Hilborn interpretation, then share it. We're obligated to teach fellow humans. Be blessed. Blessed be. The end.